The Magna Carta is a foundational document of human rights and the rule of law. It was signed by King John and is still today referenced to ensure that no person is above the law of the land. What is less well known is that King John actually signed two charters, the Magna Carta and the Carta de Foresta, the Charter of the Forest. The Charter of the Forest, much like the Magna Carta, protected fundamental interests held by all people. It gave all people access to forests deemed the commons. A commons stemmed from the idea that people have collective, shared rights to land that they can sustain together. In the commons, all people had access to the essentials of life: wood for construction, for cooking, for heating, land for animal grazing. But much like the memory of the Carta de Foresta, the idea of the commons has been lost in most developed societies in the world. As countries like Canada have been colonized, societies that embraced the commons were quickly displaced from common land, with a new legal term, terra nullius, land belonging to no one. As societies have progressed, we have allowed land to be consistently privatized and commodified. In turn, our industrialized centers are jeopardizing the environment, worsening climate change, and affecting all people globally and locally. So knowing this, I asked myself, what could we do? And I came across one idea consistently, an idea that returned to this notion of a commons, reclaimed space in favor of public benefit, protected against the destructive impacts of cities, and demanded the right to sustain the environment. This idea was green roofs. I decided to explore green roofs by visiting different locations and speaking to green roof owners, installers, academics, manufacturers, and other professionals to learn about the uses and benefits of green roofs.
The last tour stop is the green roof. And for those people not really paying that much attention when they walk up the stairs, they think they're still on the ground level when they walk out to the roof, and they think they're just looking at the garden because the plants have grown up so much you can't even see the edge of the roof parapet. So basically the roof blends right into the field surrounding the Earth Ranger Center, right into the Courtright Center for Conservation. So a lot of people's eyebrows perk up and say, wow, this is really impressive looking, and just the aesthetics of it. And then you explain all the other benefits and they're pretty impressed. So we're hoping that our efforts encourage the adoption of more green roofs and these benefits start to spill over into the the larger communities, so it's not.
To me, it's engaging with a space that is not utilized in the best of ways. And I think if we put it in that context, and if the city people put it in that context, and if the policymakers put it in that context, then I think there's going to be significant synergy in that thing happening. Of course, from a city or an urban context point of view, if you think 10 or 20 years down the road, then it makes absolute sense to have. We require greenery around our buildings. The city has stipulations about landscape around your building. You should have this. Why not roofs?
I think there's an incredible desire out there for sustainable living, whether it be, urban gardening or urban farming or, taking, not using plastic shopping bags or whatever. There is a sustainable movement out there that crosses generations.
In the future city where half of the world will be living, so for the first time in human history, the majority of people in the world are living in cities. What we will see is a tight integration of urban agriculture, green infrastructure, and what I call social infrastructure.
I think taking a roof space that's underutilized or not utilized at all and being able to turn it into something that generates that became a form of social infrastructure, particularly within a building, is a very powerful and bottom line benefit.
First of all, it's intensive and extensive growing that's happening here. So we have growing from 2 inches to 12 inches. We have planter growing, planter box growing on our base, and also vertical growing throughout the garden. We have sedums that are one of the easiest growing plants on a roof, as they need very little attention. And then we're growing vegetables, from native vegetables and vegetables from all over the world that require much work. We have native plants, we have medicinal plants, we have herbs, we have trees, so there's that whole variety.
Regreening conventionally asphalted or impervious surfaces will ultimately improve urban heat island effects. You know, the city of Toronto is 7, 8, 9 degrees hotter than the surrounding regions, you know, day and night. And a large part of this is because pavement and concrete and asphalt absorb sun all day and then they re-emit it as heat energy at nighttime. That causes a whole lot of problems, not only for us in terms of smog and human health effects, but lots of plants and animals are strongly negatively affected by this massive change in microclimate. We're only starting to understand that now.
But interestingly, I saw a red-tailed hawk here not long ago. Not on the roof, but circling over it. So I know that, you know, that there's forces in this city that we're not even aware of. As, you know, when we walk around and go to College Park and stuff, we don't know that there's a red-tailed hawk that is herding pigeons over to University Avenue so it can hunt them better than on a roof like this. So, you know, walking up here, if you walk up here suddenly, you'll see suddenly all this action, things flying away. You know, there's birds here, there's things that are, there's a life here that I really appreciate and am awe of. It shows how strong nature is, you know, those powerful forces. And if we as humans can facilitate those forces as opposed to barrier them and see them as problems, I think it all works out.
So in Germany, green roof started probably in the 1970s, and at that time, because they have a lot of issue about water retention, you know, stormwater issue in the urban area as the towns are starting to build up. So, and then they look at green roof as one of the ways of doing it. And in Germany, the government come up with bylaw and also incentive program, and then everybody start to work on green roofing. And so it became an industry. So they do have a lot more background compared to us. And as the industry start to develop, more and more players come in, and then there are regulation, building code, testing method, all come together. And for Canada and United States and North America, we're a little bit behind. But as the city are becoming bigger, just like the city of Toronto, so we start to think sustainability is so important. We're facing the same issue, urban heat island, stormwater runoff, just like the German city. So we are looking into the green roofs as well. So basically we are a little bit behind, but we are catching up really quickly.
We've been in this sort of stasis area for the last 10 years where we've moved away from the kind of like original let's plant anything onto the roof to only let's plant sedums to like let's go back and look at the prairie meadow style of green roofs. And where will this all go? We don't know yet, but certainly evidence from research is leading much stronger towards the kind of roof that you see behind us.
This green roof wasn't really part of the original plans. Back in '98 when we started the building and had the blueprints for it, it was supposed to be part of the first building as part of our green roof program and the green building program. And at that time we were doing all these different features like recycle and reclaim materials and, you know, reduced lighting and all that sort of stuff, natural lighting and automated windows and all these different things that we were putting in place. And then finally the guy that was working for MEC and working on the design said, what about a green roof? And everybody's like, green roof, what's, you know, didn't really know much about it, right? It was a bit of a guinea pig project because no one really understood, you know, much about green roofs and the benefits to it. but we did the research and saw that within 7 to 10 years you can get a payback on your investment, and so we went with it, and it's been a huge success. We've had it for 15 years now.
So what you have is a pre-grown vegetation mat. This one right here, actually. It comes with the growing medium already built in, and it comes with the plants already pre-grown, so very much like sod. It's grown at ground level. It's rolled up, brought up to the roof, and then unrolled on the roof. So what you see here is the mat, and you can see the roots from the sedums right underneath here, and they grow into the fleece. You can see they're growing into the fleece, these very fine white roots that I've just ripped. Very, very fine roots. They would have been into this layer here, and this layer is a water retention layer. It absorbs moisture. You can see all of the plant's roots now, it's easier. The roots grow from this layer into this layer here, and basically suck up rainwater from this component. And this is basically our substitute to growing medium. Instead of having loose growing medium on the roof, we simply use this layer, which is much cleaner, as you can see, very light, very quick to install. And the huge advantage is that you can roll up these components just as easily as you see here. The roots are not very aggressive, so it's quite simple to separate these. This is your drainage layer, which creates an airspace on the roof so that any excess water that cannot be absorbed in these two components, the mat and the fleece, will now drain through to this drainage layer and then travel horizontally towards your roof drain, or in this case towards this perforated edge, and then just flow over to the gutter. And then lastly, what you see here, this is a root barrier. This is a protection for the waterproofing membrane. And the root barrier goes all the way to the edge because you want to protect your roofing membrane 100% of the roof. And although you don't see a seam, just like sod, the seam has disappeared over time, but the actual components, they will never, this carrier will never fuse to the other piece. So you'll always have, here you go, there's the seam. You'll always have that one piece that you can separate, just like that.
Green roofs are a really old idea. You know, we have evidence of green roofs going back 5,000 years, where plants were used on roofs for cooling and insulated benefits. So at one level, you know, at a broad level, using vegetation on a built structure is a very old idea. But it's also a new idea because within the last 10, 15, 20 years, we've developed new lightweight growing media and modular systems where we can bring up roofing, the green roof in pieces and basically assemble them together and integrate it with irrigation systems and root repellency and all the different layers that make up the green roof assembly. So there are a lot of there's R&D going on in terms of plants, in terms of growing medium, in terms of water retention. So it's an old idea that's been, you know, that's subject to a lot of new developments, essentially.
The industry keeps moving forward. This is a really kind of an intelligence-based industry whereby the more you know, the better your product can be, the better success rate you'll have, and optimally, or hopefully, the better performing roofs you'll create.
We are developing technologies to install residential green roof. And at this moment, not that many technologies are available to install green roof at a slope. So we are developing technology for that. And down the road, we are confident that the green roof installation cost will be comparable to the steel roof or less. You know, green roof lasts for 50 years, and steel roof is about that time or a little bit longer, but the benefit of this green roof is far, far higher, better than the steel roof.
They helped us to facilitate a community engagement process where we would reach out to the community. That includes these condo members behind us, condo owners. We have businesses in the community and a lot of the members who attend the Y as part of a gymnasium fitness program or the child care. And we since have a newcomers in a high school in this building. And so that group, we did through a series of town halls, we had a blog, and we had a bunch of email engagements. We also gave opportunity for different people at different times of day to tell us really what they thought a space like this could look like if we were to make it into more of a green space, a social space, a gathering space, potentially a fitness space, an educational space. And as we worked through that level of engagement, it offered people a chance to really brainstorm and think about how they might use it.
We've had theater groups here, we've had music groups, we've had board meetings, we've had food groups and other similar that come here to meet. We've had bar mitzvahs, we had a shower, going away parties, birthday parties.
It was a lot of sort of participatory work. I remember in I think it was maybe late August 2008, the students were out here planting themselves, and we didn't need to get professionals for that. It was just, we were down on our hands and knees, and we devised a bit of a layout for the plants, and we planted it ourselves.
I've reflected here and there on what I'd prefer in certain areas of the roof, but I'm not likely to intervene because I don't know if I'm actually right. You know, my personal views are pale in comparison to the natural forces at play in a place like this. So I'll just leave it alone, you know, and hope it can. I mean, it's becoming more beautiful all the time. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it. That might be another way to look at it.
The maintenance requirements are not as onerous as a lot of people would think, and the benefits spill off in terms of you know, the reductions in local heat island effect, the stormwater management benefits, just the aesthetics for staff looking out the window and seeing a nice healthy green roof have a lot of value as well to the tenants and the occupants of the building. So I would say that do a little bit of homework on the maintenance requirements. They're not as onerous as you might think, even for a mechanical engineer like myself who, you know, can't grow a tomato in his backyard. We've managed to keep this roof growing and looking quite well now for 3 years.
In understanding green roofs, it's important to understand the greater context in which they are being built or failing to be built. It turns out, much like in the time of King John, governance is the most important influence on land. I learned that in encouraging green roof development, policy, especially municipal policy, is key to progress. And to learn about policy, I didn't have to go very far.
Well, the Green Roofs bylaw was adopted by the City of Toronto, and then we also received the provincial authority for the City of Toronto Act, for the City of Toronto to enact this bylaw, which is a unique power that Toronto has in Ontario, because otherwise the Ontario Building Code, which is the regulations by the province of Ontario, which regulates any construction, if you will, is really the maximum that municipality can request for of a development.
I think people or municipalities are more aware of it, but Toronto's definitely been a leader, and other municipalities seem to be following and looking to Toronto's example and using it as a point of departure, especially the Toronto Green Roof Bylaw combined with the Toronto Green Standard, which to me I think are two of the most incredible, sustainable development innovations that I've seen in my career for sure.
The policy is really focused around the Green Roof Bylaw and the Eco Roof Incentive Program. And then the bylaw is, I guess, essentially two distinct or separate components. One is what the bylaw prescribes in terms of green roofs with respect to whether or not you have to have one and what sort of coverage you need. And then the second part of the bylaw is the Green Roof Construction Standard, which applies to all the green roofs prescribed by the bylaw, but it also impacts any other green roof in the city. It basically states that you need to have a green roof permit for any green roof that you're doing within the City of Toronto, and mandates sort of a minimum construction standard and regulatory framework for that green roof.
In Canada, municipalities have a history of being innovators in environmental policy. Despite this, green roof policies are almost non-existent. I learned that this is because of several obstacles that exist not on top, but within our governing institutions.
The way we've structured modern organizations and bureaucracies, they're very siloed. They have very focused mandates. And one of the things about green roofs and walls is that they're cross-cutting. The benefits, they touch upon a lot of different dimensions of life. A green roof can reduce energy consumption in the building and cool the surrounding area, which could be the purview of the local electrical utility. A green roof can provide local jobs and ongoing maintenance, which could be the purview of the economic development department, particularly if it's doing things like providing food. A green roof has a series of health benefits associated with active recreation and also the cleansing of air, which could be the purview of the environmental health department. And so these technologies, they cut across, and yet we've organized our bureaucracies and their mandates and their funding to be sort of siloed. So part of the challenge is breaking down the silos between different departments and setting up mechanisms by which they can understand they have a common interest, a shared interest in seeing a particular technology move forward in a city.
There's two challenges. One is, debunking the myths about what green roofs can do, and more importantly, what they can't do. And the other one is recognizing that every green roof needs to be a specific design problem, and you can't use the same solution on every project. So the same plants, the same depth of growing media, the same irrigation regimes or non-irrigation regimes, same maintenance. All these factors must be considered, and we need to educate both our clients and fellow consultants, and that's architects, civil engineers, mechanical engineers, mainly those are our team, and the building owner, operators, or constructors when it's a private development.
The biggest barrier is not enough people seeing how this connects to health outcomes. So I think we have a chance to kind of demonstrate that here, but I find, especially in the climate of austerity and cuts, that many times things like gardening are not considered like a core service, and they're considered like an add-on. So I haven't found that to be the case here, but I think this is kind of an exception. So part of our work here is to demonstrate, this is actually enhancing and strengthening and improving your health outcomes of all your other health programs, and that it shouldn't be just considered like something extra or like luxury thing that only special places have.
The cost has always been the impediment, but the value is starting to be recognized by various different people. The stormwater value and the heat island value are tangible results, and they can be used as certainly low-hanging fruit that people want to sort of like engage with and develop.
I think it's just it's inertia. It's, people have been building this way for a long time. There's always the cost concern. There's issues of who's building the building to who's going to own it, and owners demanding better of their buildings instead of just lowest upfront cost, being more aware of the sustainable case, both in terms of environmental impact and cost concerns. And that is very well established now for green buildings, including for green roofs.
In learning about access and the right to land in the environment, I saw a key parallel to access and the right to food. Urban agriculture, while popular in its own right, had no mention in any green roof policy I could find.
The cities that historically, especially if they're old cities, were built in the most fertile agricultural land have paved over that same land, and the food comes from ever more distant and often unknown and changing places.
Basically, Rise Homegrown is an initiative on campus that strives to grow food on campus using underutilized spaces such as these ones. And the food that we grow on campus, we ideally would put provided back to the community. So whether it's through food services on campus, through our events, or to the volunteers that come out and help us grow food, or the community food bank on campus.
So now we have a health problem about food that no one anticipated, and no one's prepared to deal with it. So ministries of health, or even public health, grew up with the same assumption about food. So it was just a matter of people being able to have enough money to buy food. And there wasn't a question of the quality of the food or its origin, its provenance. Now all those questions are strong upon us, and we've inherited an institutional structure where no one is able to really think about food.
In the early years of planning, the relation to food was right there. You know, the idea of garden city a century ago, which is one of the founding ideas of the planning profession. You know, as the name indicated, the relation to gardens, to food production, agriculture was right there. But over time, a disconnect was created.
And I sat with planners from all over Ontario at round tables doing exercises, and it was a revelation to them. Not only that food was a planning issue, which it's only recently become officially for professional planners, but also that it could actually help them solve many of their problems in traffic or in parks and recreation, certainly in public health, in social services for low-income people, so on.
The ability to grow your own food in the urban environment is a really important and amazing opportunity. The Green Roof Bylaw, though, doesn't recognize urban agriculture as a green roof because it's not vegetated throughout the year. So I think that is another exemption that should be allowed for.
And then the question becomes, is that extra cost somehow worth it? And that's for a community to decide at one end, on one hand, is that the community needs to set out parameters. What does worth it mean to us? Okay. And then if it's worth it, and still it means that some of the developers, there'll be disincentive, then we need to figure out a way to make compromises.
Even though now you live in the suburb, in 5 years, you could be in the city center. In 10 years, you're right in the middle of it. And then we have to think ahead, and we have to learn from the city center what problem they're having. And then we know that eventually we are going to have the similar type of problem. So then why not start to adopt it and start to do something, increase that public awareness first, and then so that we don't have to repeat the same growing pain as before, like for the urban centers.
The biggest problem of the old century, the biggest opportunity of this century is that people are stuck in little wee silos and they don't see how things need to integrate, and we need to look at it, not how does it benefit this one thing, but how does it benefit the whole. Nothing works if you're only thinking of what's one benefit. It works because you're adding $75 a season from this, $125 from this, something hundred because we got a fantastic view when you get up in the morning, and you'll get that when you resell the house. Something because you're protecting the roof's life from about 20 years max to probably 35 or 40 because you don't have any solar radiation. There's another huge saving of thousands of dollars, right? So it's the whole trick of the new urban scene is you're nickel and diming benefits together.
Well, just like what we've seen with the bylaw, it's government. Government will lead the way, and then it'll become mainstream, and then it'll just be a way of life. You grew up with that, that's the only thing you know, and you know that that's the right thing to do. But in our case right now, where it's just beginning, it's government that has to lead us in that direction.
Another place to start is look at your own built form. How many buildings do you have? When are those buildings slated for re-roofing? Are you building any new buildings? Or you could incorporate a green roof into it? That's a good place to start, to sort of walk the talk for municipal governments, local governments, county governments, provincial governments, state governments to use their own buildings and get the benefits of green roofs by implementing them on their own buildings.
I think there's also some good elected officials across just about every municipality in Ontario and beyond who would probably be prepared to champion it if they thought that they didn't have to do it alone. You know, and they had a community that was there to support them and be able to convince their colleagues that it was worth doing. Because again, remember, in Toronto we had green roofs policies before we had the bylaw.
Although several obstacles do exist, municipalities have many tools that they can use to encourage green roofs. So the reason for so few green roof policies was one obstacle I heard mentioned again and again: a lack of knowledge. A lack of knowledge about green roofs, and a lack of knowledge of the joint opportunities they offered. It was time to take action, at home. The city of Brampton, Canada's Flower City, is a suburb in the Greater Toronto Area, and the 9th largest city in Canada. It is growing at an exponential rate, with an estimated 162 million square feet of commercial industrial space expected by 2016. This municipality is actively challenging the traditional notion of the suburb. Brampton needs environmental protections to keep this kind of development in check, including a green roof policy. So I set out to explore how it could be done.
Thank you for calling the City of Brampton. Please note your call may be recorded for quality control and training purposes.
And eventually, somebody picked up.
So if you have situations where it's being done and it's exactly as predicted, it's profitable, it's beneficial, and it's can be proven, and you can present that to us, well, that makes it so much easier for us to say, yeah, let's try it.
As you get on and your mobility is limited, you still, anything you can do to do gardening, even in the wintertime, puttering around with indoor plants and this type of thing, certainly beneficial to anybody, I think, to be able to work. Plant therapy has been proven over for many generations that people, even people with severe mental challenges, benefit from been working with plants and this type of thing. So it's been, I don't think there's anybody who doesn't benefit from being exposed to plants and being allowed to work with nature.
So to us, our big concern is the cost to make that, to introduce this to the development industry, to the price of homes, to the price of business, and it's not going to scare away potential investors in our city because we're forcing them to do something that is expensive and may not yield the benefits that you're indicating.
And I would look forward to any kind of suggestions that might encourage staff to come up with some type of recommendations on green roof legislation or encouragement for that. But again, I would certainly talk to our several different departments in the city to see exactly what we can do and what we can't do, because there's no point coming up with oh, this is what you should do if it's impossible, it can't get off the ground. But on the same token, if you can suggest things that are possible, then that's great. Anything that we can do, I certainly think, even though staff says, well, that's difficult. Well, difficult takes a little longer perhaps, but at least it's not impossible.
There are things in place there like a hood ring and some other stuff. So you would still need to bring stuff in. But it's a good foot.
I don't know how the audio will pick up though.
But
it'll be fine. It's close enough.
After months of interviews, discussions, and meetings, I was ready to present my findings and propose how Brampton would best implement a green roof policy. It was time to put green roofing on Brampton's political agenda officially, with a delegation at City Hall. Thanks very much for having me. My name is Bart Danko. What I've been working on for the last couple of years is a master's project which consists of green roofs and green roof policy. What I've been doing is creating a film, but at the same time creating a policy document that I hope might be used in encouraging more green roofs and green roof policy. What I'll be talking about today is sort of the journey that I've been through, as well as some of the recommendations I have for Brampton, some of the things I've learned and some things that I think would be valuable in terms of our progression for green roof policy in Brampton. I've looked at different jurisdictions that have implemented green roof policies, and I've looked what would be most applicable in Brampton. I've come up with a few conclusions. One of them is direct incentives. Stormwater management fee exemption, a low interest loan program has been used. We can have small scale projects. And so small scale projects are usually not prioritized because big scale projects are seen as having additional benefits. At the same time, to permeate public consciousness, and this is the problem with a lot of environmental initiatives, to permeate public consciousness, the public has to be doing these things. A policy that focuses on urban agriculture. No other policy in the world focuses on agriculture in terms of green roofing, because oftentimes urban agriculture is perceived as making green roofing more difficult. My slant to it is, it actually makes green roofing that much more attractive because it provides all these additional benefits, like providing a social space, providing food, providing additional economic benefits that we wouldn't have otherwise. So on that note as well, the city has to take initiative. Every building in the city should have a green roof. And that's every building that's being built, and not necessarily retroactively, but as older buildings are worked on and the roofs are repaired, why not put a green roof on those buildings as well? Buildings that have a green roof associated with them, they get fast-tracked to the front of the line in terms of getting certain approvals at the city. And so there's little creative ways just like that to sort of make it more attractive for certain developers to do a green roof. Educational materials are key. If there's one thing that is preventing more green roofs, it's just a lack of knowledge. I often hear this argument, why do a green roof if solar panels can make me a little bit of money? Oftentimes it's taking a very narrow perspective of what green roofs are actually doing. And beyond all those additional benefits like farming and social space and all that, because not all roofs are good for that. Solar panels have actually been proven to work more effectively with green roofs. When you have this sort of joint benefit, you can reap both the rewards, and to think that it's an either-or argument is a flawed assumption, when really it's why not do both? At the end of the day, it's very much the public that benefits the most from any green roof or green roof policy in any city, because they're the ones that are benefiting from the water purification and all that. And so sometimes you do things that necessarily aren't everybody's favorite thing to do. As climate change becomes a larger problem, and the places we live are increasingly urbanized, the need for proactive policies with direct local impacts will grow. Although the Carta de Foresta was forgotten long ago, much like the notion of a commons, the need of all people to reclaim the spaces around them has never been stronger. Green roofs are only one answer, and Brampton is only one city. There are many obstacles, but also many more meetings planned, with more people to speak to. And I'm confident that soon, many policies and many green roofs might not be so uncommon.